Did Joe Biden's senior moments ruin it for older Democrats? A civil war is erupting in the party, pitting the old guard versus the new guard as a wave of retirements clears a path for younger Democrats. A Rutgers political scientist is blaming the former president, saying this is fallout from the Biden effect. It contaminated old Democrats. According to Harvard's new youth poll, approval of the Democratic Party has plummeted in half in just 5 years. And the first domino to fall, Illinois Senator Dick Durbin announcing his retirement after decades in Congress.
I think if you're honest about yourself and your reputation, you want to leave when you can still walk out the front door and not be carried out the back door.
This old versus young dynamic is playing out at the DNC with the party's chairman, Ken Martin, forced to rebuke Vice President Greg. Anyway, there's some Democrats. Watch this.
Voters should decide who our primary nominees are, not DNC leadership. I have great respect for David Hogg. I've said to him, if you want to challenge incumbents, you're more than free to do that, but just not as an officer of the DNC, because our job is to be neutral arbiters.
But the young uprising comes at a cost, and National Review is saying this. Social media is killing the Democratic Party, warning that swing state voters are not fans of the party, elevating left-wing influencers over coalition builders. But Pete Buttigieg is warning Dems to cool it with the woke finger-pointing, saying this.
There are a lot of people that I think Democrats are understood to care about, like
Yes.
low-income people, black and brown people are like disproportionately caught up in the economic pain when something like this happens. And so I do think my party needs to do a much better job, especially with the kind of finger wagging that you're talking about. I think we are like very prone to that. You get this sense of like moral conviction and you're so sure of it that you start to think it makes it okay to be an asshole.
Oh, there's the cursing again. We love the cursing. Jessica, they are old, but their ideas seem even older. Curious what you think about this decision. I know Dick Durbin's been there for a long time. Yeah. It's interesting that he's calling himself a moderate. I'm not sure that would fit the bill. Although compared to the young guard, maybe he is. Is that a problem?
I'm not sure it's a problem. Well, Dick Durbin's not running. Okay.
Just kidding.
Okay. So early in the show, you know, Dick Durbin is 80 years old, and I'm not sure that this would have been any different, this decision, had the Biden issue happened or not, or Jeanne Shaheen in New Hampshire clearing the way for, I think, Chris Pappas should have a very good shot at winning that seat. There's a lot of young talent, and there are people who I think were considering their retirement before Joe Biden stayed on too long. In terms of being moderate, the most important thing that Dick Durbin did for the party was he was always spearheading the bipartisan immigration legislation and really wanting to get a comprehensive immigration plan passed. And I don't know who's going to take over that mantelpiece for us, but, you know, I don't think all hope is lost in this. I think it's great if Lauren Underwood, who I like a lot, is the one that takes over for that Illinois Senate seat. I think it's a very good thing. I know the lieutenant governor is running as well. As for Ken Martin, it's good to see him kind of putting the smackdown on what's going on with David Hogg. And he says, you're more than welcome to spend money on races. You just can't be part of the DNC and do that. And a lot of people wanted that vice chair job that David Hogg got. And it'll be interesting to see what he chooses to do, to be part of the party infrastructure or to go out on his own.
So time waits for no one, right? It's the most bipartisan thing in the world, Kayleigh. And you did have the Biden effect, but when you look at the average age of the leadership of the Democratic Party, it is way up there. And so this is a little bit inevitable.
It is. And you're going to see these challengers. They tend to be younger. They tend to be progressive. They tend to be popular among Democrats, like we've seen in the polling with AOC. The end of what Jessica said there, I want to pick up on that. Ken Martin at the DNC. He's exactly right to say you cannot be a player and a referee. I worked at the RNC for nearly 3 years, and we did not play in primaries. It was a strict rule. You know, we are there to support whoever gets the nomination and carry it forward. So David Hogg is wrong in that sense to say, let's go out and primary people. Here's the problem for the DNC. They have a hypocrisy problem. A lot of people like David Hogg, perhaps, remember Bernie Sanders in 2016 and Donna Brazile, who wrote the book, who said if the fight had been fair, one campaign would not have had control of the party. She was meaning the Hillary Clinton campaign. She said it was not criminal, but it compromised the party's integrity. Elizabeth Warren was asked, do you think this was rigged against Bernie? She said, yes. We all remember the emails that came out that talked about Bernie Sanders' religion and how that would play in Kentucky and West Virginia. Even the New York Times called into question the integrity of the DNC and their fairness there. And then we remember 2024, where not a single vote was cast for Kamala Harris. I get it was an aberrational circumstance, but I'm certain there are young people, there are Gen Z, there are progressives on the sidelines who feel like the deck has been stacked against them, and the DNC is going to have to figure that out. Ken Martin's right, but you got to grapple with the past.
What about, Greg, the fact that the cover-up of Biden's age and acuity is affecting them? And I think they hurt the Democratic Party for an entire generation.
Yeah, unless the media doesn't write about it. Now, the way it's portrayed, they're all acting like this was a big surprise. I think there are obvious explanations for this that have nothing to do with age. No one wants to be in a party where they aren't wanted. Men left because they were tired of being the villain in every story. Where did they go? The party where it's okay to be a guy and the women do not have penises. It's a no-brainer. That's where you go. It's sad to see Dick go, though.
Right.
I think this is a blowback due to identity politics. The party became the awful party, the affluent white liberal female, where they identify every group. They created a hierarchy of grievance where blame and victimhood became its currency. It doesn't matter if you're 40 or 80 or 20 or 30. If you embrace this Marxist platform that life is nothing but a struggle between people with power, it's going to drive people crazy. Because we notice this in your Peloton class, in your book club, in the movies you watch. It's suffocating. People don't want to be in a world where somebody is blaming somebody else. And so what happened? The very worst thing possible. The Democrats became uncool. Mm-hmm. This is like the first time. They became the next door neighbor in Bewitched. Was it Mrs. Gladys?
Gladys.
Gladys. The Dean in Animal House. And then you have Fonzie, America's bad boy. You know, a mix of Evel Knievel, Don Rickles, and Godzilla, all in Donald Trump. And the more that you demonized him, the cooler he got. He became the political equivalent of a Hell's Angels jacket. You put it on, underneath it, you got a pack of smokes wrapped up in your T-shirt. It just was like, what kid wouldn't like to be part of that, as opposed to the party that their substitute teacher belongs to with all their little pins on her backpack? It is the Democrats' greatest achievement that they made common sense the essence of rebellion. And they anointed Trump being its gladiator. The wackier and more intrusive the woke-driven Democrats got, the more subversive stuff like plastic straws, gas-powered cars, you know, hot, real women became. The Dems became the frumpy crone in the used bookstore. The Republicans became the bikini-clad woman holding a flamethrower. Who doesn't want that?
That's fun.
That's a good visual to turn to Brian on for a last word.
I was going to say the exact same thing.
Yes.
It was so split, but I don't think age matters. I don't think it's that Joe Biden didn't ruin older people for being the leaders of the Democratic Party. It's just credibility. I think that people know that he wasn't ready for the job. They got mad at you when you brought it up, and people covered for him. And now the media lied for him. Now they have no credibility. Joe Biden's gone, and they've lost the trust of the American people. In terms of David Hogg, I mean, he has never run a campaign. He has never helped a candidate. He has just yelled a lot about guns, and he's able to raise a lot of money. So he's being attacked not by us and not by people outside here. He's being attacked by people at his own party. They're calling him a twerp. They're calling him out. And I remember what Reince Priebus said on Sunday. He said, what would you do if your vice chair came out and said, I'm going to primary people? He goes, I would have fired him. Right. He said, I would have fired him. He said, you have some good points. I kind of agree with you, but you can't do this. That's not the way it works. Someone in charge has to has their deputy turn on him. And I would just say this. You just saw the most inauthentic thing possible to start this segment. It was Mayor Pete cursing, growing a beard, who took his pronouns down because he looked at the pie charts and the bar graphs and said, you got to be tough and you got to show a ruggedness. So he's playing dress up again. So to me, if that is what you're going to bet on, inauthenticity, and what Trump did today, for example, It just punted anybody who's concerned about age. Dick Durbin wants to step aside. That's fine. I don't think he's slipping. But does anyone remember they said Trump was slipping? This guy every day talks to the press for 90 minutes.
Yep.
He just sat there with the Prime Minister of Norway and just took every question all the time. Now he's going to go sit down with 3 reporters from The Atlantic.
Right.
If you weren't confident at the top of your game or worried, do you think he had to go talk to his, no offense, talk to his press team to find out if I should do the Atlantic story? No, I can do it.
No,
I'll
he doesn't talk to them.
So
Yeah.
I just think that age doesn't matter. I don't think Biden ruined for age. I just think he ruined for credibility because he couldn't do the job and he didn't tell us. He wouldn't admit it. The party covered for him, and now the media covered for him, and now Biden's out of the picture, and they've lost their credibility.
Can I mention one thing about David Hogg that Karl Rove told us today on Newsroom? He said that David Hogg has a super PAC of his own, separate from this, and he raised almost $12 million. And out of that $12 million, he donated to 2 Democratic campaigns. Where did the rest of it go? Operations.
Wow.
And one of the things Karl looked at was on the FEC report, DoorDash.
Wow.
I mean, the numbers are unbelievable.
With me now, New York Republican Congressman Mike Lawler. Congressman, it's great to have you on. I want to put these numbers up because numbers are great. This is kind of instructive. This is the Siena poll, right? This is the last poll in January 2021. So put this up on the screen. AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez at 47%. And right there in column number 2, that's Chuck Schumer, 39%. That, by the way, is the worst in Siena College polling. The first time since 2005 that he's been underwater like that. What do you think?
Guys, think about this. Chuck Schumer has been in elected office since 1974. 50 years. It's time to go. And the fact is, if he doesn't make the decision for himself, AOC and Democrats will. And he will be booted out of office come 2028 because he's feckless. He's ineffective. And I think most people recognize he's past his prime. He doesn't seem to realize that. But you look at what happened last year on these college campuses, especially at Columbia. He tells the Columbia leadership, keep your head down. Don't worry about it. Not a problem. He refused to pass the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, my bill to combat anti-Semitism on college campuses, sat on it for 8 months because he was afraid of offending Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. It's a joke. And the fact is, when you see AOC surging, the Democratic base is rallying behind her and Bernie Sanders.
Right.
They're not rallying behind Chuck Schumer.
But that's an issue right there. It's amazing to me to see that because of this huge social media following that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and says these wild things, and Jasmine Crockett comes out every day and says something more crazy than she said the day before because they know it's going to get views. It's going to get notice.
Not only is it going to get views, that's where their base is. I mean, this idea that somehow San Francisco is trying to moderate itself is a joke. Their most famous representative is Nancy Pelosi. And, you know, she is someone who will obviously say and do anything to win an election. But when it comes time to govern, they govern as a radical left. You look at Gavin Newsom, you look at Dianne Feinstein, the fact that they're talking about age requirements, that's because Dianne Feinstein was brain dead for all intensive purposes before she died.
Jasmine Crockett, we just mentioned her. She said they don't really need policy. They just need vibes. Didn't we play this before? Watch.
I think that one of the things that we've got to do is focus on how we communicate, not necessarily exactly what we say. I don't think that, honestly, policy is what we need to be fighting about, because guess what? Can't nobody tell you what Donald Trump's policies were. I think that people are voting on vibes.
Didn't they just do this? Didn't they 4 months ago say it's all about the vibe, and they lost
the vibes,
big
and Kamala Harris lost masterfully. I mean, the fact is, it is about the policy. People care about affordability. They care about public safety. They care about the migrant crisis. They're tired of the radical woke indoctrination in our schools. They do care about policy, and I think they're missing the lessons of the 2024 election.
Dick Durbin goes. Who comes in? Rahm Emanuel is being tossed about. What do you think?
That wouldn't surprise me, though. You know, it's fascinating. Rahm Emanuel was a terrible mayor of Chicago, only to be replaced by 2 people even worse than him. And so he looks better, obviously, as the years go on. But the fact is, Illinois has the same crisis that New York and California have, which is feckless Democratic leadership that has destroyed these states.
But when your party is in the state that it's in now, Rahm Emanuel seems like the good old days.
That's why Andrew Cuomo's leading in the polls in New York City.
Yeah, it's like, wow, remember when we had it so good?
Exactly.
Congressman, thank you for coming on. We appreciate it.
The second-ranked Senate Democrat, Dick Durbin, saying he's retiring after 5 terms, ending his 44 congressional year career.
That's right. Senior congressional correspondent Chad Pergram is live on Capitol Hill, where, Chad, you have covered this guy for a very long time.
Long time. A sea change for the Democrats with Dick Durbin announcing his retirement. He first won election to the House in 1982, the Senate in 1996. His retirement signals a youth movement in the party.
In my heart, I know it's time to pass the torch. So I'm announcing today that I will not be seeking re-election at the end of my term. I'll do everything in my power to fight for Illinois and the future of our country every day of my remaining time in the Senate.
After last year's debacle over age with former President Biden, political longevity is toxic in the Democratic Party. There's a push on the left for Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer to step down from his post, especially after Schumer helped President Trump avoid a government shutdown last month. A Siena poll has Schumer plummeting to his lowest approval rating in 2 decades.
Polls always come and go. I'm focused on making sure the people of New York and the people of America know how bad Trump is. And I have found throughout my career, you do your job and everything works out just fine.
Democratic New York Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is polling ahead of Schumer. Some progressives want her to challenge him in a primary.
I really don't see Ocasio-Cortez defeating him in a Democratic primary in New York. I mean, Schumer is absolutely omnipresent on New York television. You cannot turn on a network station in New York City on a weekend without seeing Chuck Schumer's face.
There are 2 races to succeed Durbin. One is in Illinois, the other in the Senate. Brian Schatz of Hawaii has the inside track to become the Democratic whip. Also watch Democrats Cory Booker, Chris Murphy, and Amy Klobuchar. Guys, back to you.
Plus, also, Chad, he runs a very powerful committee in the Senate, so that job's up, too.
Yeah, to be the top Democrat on the Judiciary Committee. He was the chairman when the Democrats had the majority. And again, if you have a Supreme Court nominee coming through, certainly doing all this that they're talking about the past few months with judges. Republicans want to rein in judges. That's something that Dick Durbin has talked a lot about. He gave a floor speech in late March talking about how he thought that the Trump administration was stepping over the line. So whoever gets that job, I would look maybe at Amy Klobuchar would be one person, Sheldon Whitehouse from Rhode Island. Those would be the top 2 I would look at first.
Yeah, what about this report about David Hogg, who's the deputy director of the DNC, basically got an ultimatum: don't primary people and stop talking about with the problems with the party. Could David Hogg's sense of change mindset win out on the Democrats? Could Schumer be heading out the door? Durbin's retiring. Could he have a groundswell?
Yeah, there's definitely this youth movement going on here, and David Hogg has talked about primarying some of these more veteran Democrats here. The DNC is basically saying, our position is that if you have a leadership position in the Democratic Party, you are to stay neutral. So whether or not there's a clash there, that could be a problem. But nonetheless, there is this push to infuse the Democratic Party with new blood. Just this morning, there was an announcement. This is not a primary challenge, but Aaliyah Nadeem, who's a Republican, and until a couple of weeks ago was the head of the Senate doorkeepers. That's a security position here at the Capitol. She is running as a Republican against Marcy Kaptur, a Democrat from Northern Ohio, the longest-serving woman in House history, first elected back in the early 1980s. That is a district that Kaptur won by only about 1,000 votes, and President Trump carried it. So again, that's where some people might say, is it time for us to run some younger candidates there? To be frank, Marcy Kaptur has always been a juggernaut in that district. That's something that has gone on for years and years, where Republicans have tried to knock her out. But Aaliyah Nadeem, is younger than her by decades. Again, that's a Republican candidate. So what happens with Marcy Kaptur? We don't know.
What about Dick Durbin? Is there a chance that a Republican could win that seat?
Very unlikely. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. You have to go back 20 years ago where you had a Republican in the Senate from Illinois. In fact, that was Barack Obama's predecessor. That district, that state, I should say, definitely trended a little bit like most places did toward President Trump, but it's a big deficit to get over that. It's very hard, I think, for a Republican to win statewide. The Republicans will do very well downstate, but you get Chicago.
Yeah.
I used the word juggernaut a minute ago. It would be very tough. I would look at Robin Kelly, a Democratic House member, Raja Krishnamurthy, a Democratic House member, and also Lauren Underwood. They would be the front runners to run for the Democratic nomination.
Well, we tried hard to stump you, but you know the answer to everything. Chad, thank you very much.
I don't know. Throw me an algebra problem or something here.
Yeah, I wish we had the time.
We need Washington Jeopardy for you.
I'd love it. I watch Jeopardy every night, and I always put on X if there's a congressional question. That's what I always do. Look at my feed every time.
I've got it.
It's the least surprising thing you've ever said.
There's a lot of that. All right, Chad, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So the Democrats' dumpster fire isn't getting put out anytime soon. At least I don't think so. The party's been hijacked by attention-seeking progressives, so-called emerging stars. AOC and Bernie flying around the country on private jets, telling the Democrats, don't listen to rich people like them who fly around in private jets. And foul-mouthed Jasmine Crockett running to late-night Jimmy Kimmel to insult the president's intelligence.
You literally are supposed to be the leader of the free world, and you're worried about a rising sophomore in the House.
He also called you low IQ. I'm sure you're aware of that. Would you be willing to take an IQ test publicly, head-to-head against the President of the United States?
Absolutely.
And to top it all off, you got moderate Democrat Rahm Emanuel. He's getting screamed at for telling the party to stop focusing on trans issues, bathroom issues.
We were really south on kitchen table issues. We weren't really good about the family room issues.
I disagree with you. I disagree with you 100
Okay, the only room we were do really well was the bathroom, and that's the smallest room in the house.
That is such bull. That is total bull. That is buying into the right-wing media narrative, and I'm so sick of Democrats like you selling out and saying this.
Do you think Rahm Emanuel buys into right-wing politics? Joining us right now is Horace Cooper, Project 21 chairman, and Alex Marlow, Breitbart's editor-in-chief and host of the Alex Marlow Show. Alex, where are the Democrats at? Should they go with their stars or should they go with their moderates?
Yeah, Brian, you know it's really bad over there when Dick Durbin's retiring and he's only 80 years old. That's like the athletic peak for a Democrat senator. So you know it must be really bad if he's getting out of the game now. I tried to do some journalism for you before I got on the show, and I tried to hunt down some of my favorite Democrat consultants. People really know what's going on in that party. And as of now, it feels like they're sitting it out. I don't think they've made a choice if they're going to go and do the Civil War thing. But, you know, for me as a conservative journalist and commentator, I would love to see the Civil War because it'll sort of be like an inverse Alien versus Predator. Remember that movie, the slogan, whoever wins, we lose? Well, whoever wins for them, we win. So I want to see it, but I don't know if it's going to happen.
So, Horace, you know what I thought was so telling is that Governor Newsom said, we haven't had any meetings. Nobody sat around and even had a brainstorming session on what went wrong in 2024. What should we work on? What should we not work on? Why hasn't anyone even called him to say, hey, I'm in the biggest state. I'm term limited out. Maybe I could give you an idea of what I think went wrong. Why do you think there hasn't been a so-called autopsy for this party?
The progressives are leaderless. They are rudderless. And I have to say, Alex, Alien versus Predator is one of my favorite movies. And I just can't tell who's the alien and who's the predator when it comes to this progressive war. Eating your own is not the answer for a comeback. Right now, people should be lining up for figuring out what kind of platform they're going to lay out that is mainstream, that the American people can embrace and welcome. But instead, it's which one can undercut or kneecap the other. Oh, and by the way, it looks like the progressives have all of the energy and most of the money. This doesn't look like it's going to come out well for them.
And Alex, it's a lot to talk about. I mean, there's the war against Ivy League schools. There's the trade, all the trade deals that are in the offering. There's the big, beautiful bill that could be a couple of months away. The Democrats do have issues they could dig in on. Why don't you think they are?
Yeah, because I think they're trapped. If you look at the polls and what Trump's running on, he's got them backed in a corner where they're defending every illegal alien, that they should get due process and get treated better than American citizens, even if they're connected to gangs. Now we all of a sudden have to scrounge together $2 extra billion for Harvard. I don't get how Trump trips them up this way every time, but he still does. So I think that's part of why their civil war hasn't really started. I don't think, to Horace's point, I don't really think they know what issues they would actually run on to forge any sort of a new platform.
Yeah, I guess what happens this year will decide what the Republicans can do for next year, and we'll see what happens in the off-year election, guys, see if they can get their act together. But I think the more you see of Crockett and AOC, the better Republicans should feel, because they're not national candidates. Thanks so much, Horace. Thanks, Alex.
The head of the DNC is taking a swipe at one party leader who seeks to pit young primary challengers against some incumbents. One veteran who does not have to worry about a primary challenge is Senate Minority Whip Dick Durbin. The longtime Illinois senator spoke earlier today after announcing yesterday that he will not seek re-election in 2026. This all is sparking additional questions about the party's future. Senior congressional correspondent Chad Pergram has the story from Capitol Hill.
An ultimatum from the head of the Democratic National Committee, Ken Martin.
No DNC officer should ever attempt to influence the outcome of a primary election, whether on behalf of an incumbent or a challenger.
DNC Vice Chairman David Hogg aimed to spend millions of dollars in primary challenges against Democratic lawmakers.
We want people to know that they're being watched. It's not to say it's out with the old and in with the new. I would say it's more accurate to say it's out with the ineffective and in with the effective.
Democrats contend the neutrality pledge is about assuring party unity.
The reforms that Chair Martin is rolling out is not a reaction to David Hogg.
But Hogg is the elephant in the room, to the party represented by a donkey.
If you want to challenge incumbents, you're more than free to do that, but just not as an officer of the DNC.
And there's rage over age. 80-year-old Senate Minority Whip Dick Durbin, the latest veteran Democrat to step down.
I had to project forward. The campaign's going to last 2 years, and then you're going to serve 6 years. So are you ready to make an 8-year commitment?
Durbin's departure could intensify progressive pressure on Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer to quit too. But Schumer isn't having it.
No conversation about when you might step aside.
I'm focusing on the decision that the Republicans in Congress have to make to whether support Trump with these horrible economic policies or not.
Age is just a number, but a number with consequences. 5 House Democrats over the age of 65 died within the past year. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries says Democrats could have stopped the GOP agenda had the older members lived. Brett?
Chad Pergram, live on the Hill. Chad, thanks.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.